November 4th at Council Hall or City Hall Council Chambers. Item 2, approval of minutes of October 14th, 2024 Board of Public Works meeting. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments? Citizens' comments. There are none. We'll move to item 4, construction updates presented by Tim Rasmussen, Street Superintendent, and Josh Moritz, City Engineer.
Good evening. Since the last time we met, Ash 2nd to 3rd, Emmanuel and Luther Court, the North End Alley, and Maple all received their final surface layer. The ditch streets of Ash, Emmanuel, and Luther Courts had shoulder and dirt restorations completed, along with the completion of the skip dash painting on South Maple. It is relieving that all the Mill and Place projects were paved here before November, but we immediately took off with the crack filling on our concrete streets. This is a process of maintenance that we had normally contracted out. But as you remember, we didn't get any bidders on our RFP this past summer, so we're navigating our way through this process in-house. Roughly about 3/4 of the 2024 list has been completed so far, and we'll continue to attack more streets on that list as the weather allows. Once our concrete crew completed their work on South Maple, they began completing ordered sidewalk repairs, along with sidewalk repairs along city-owned properties. We'll continue to complete this work until the temperatures or precipitation don't allow us to be cost-effective to complete anymore. Our 2 traffic guys help manage traffic control for the sanitary main cleaning and televising on North Central for the wastewater plant. This process went smoothly for both departments, and it is expected to complete another location along South Central in the future. Our traffic guys also were busy completing the South Central closure for Main Street Marshall's trick-or-treating, along with the West 5th Street trick-or-treating last week there. They also flagged for our concrete crack filling process, painted additional center skip dashes, along with other sign and post installation that were needed over the last couple of weeks. Looking ahead, they have the closure for the Thanksgiving Day YMCA Turkey Trot, along with the holiday parade on South Central on December 5th. On November 12th, we will begin the holiday preparations for South Central and the downtown area, starting with taking down the American flags and followed by the installation of garland and ornaments. This work takes roughly 2 weeks to complete. We will also continue to complete street sweepings here to remove the leaves from the curb lines until they are cleaned or the weather doesn't allow us to have that truck out if it gets too cold. I also spoke to the contracted mowing company that does the work along Veterans Parkway, and they have some final string trimming to do, but the mowing is done here for the year. Last week, the preparations of our salting fleet transitions were completed, and we now have a full salting and plowing equipment that has been transitioned over to the winter process, and we also calibrated the salt and pre-wet systems for those trucks. We will continue to prepare more of the remaining plow equipment once we're done restocking our pits, materials down by at our stockpiles. One last item to note is the street division roof replacement also started last week. So this ends the construction update for the street division. Any questions?
I see none. Go ahead, Josh.
All right, there's really 2 projects outstanding that the engineering division is administering. The larger one being Green Acres. The asphalt is scheduled to be, American Asphalt is scheduled to be fine grading and paving this week. All the curb is in. A different concrete contractor is installing driveway aprons. The developer wishes to install all of them at once, so 77 driveway aprons. And the developer's continuing to construct homes on that section. So that should be open, I would guess, in the next, 3-4 weeks maybe. The other project is the Adler Road multi-use trail. Last week, they finished installing the guardrail, did the turf restoration, installed the signage, and similar to the Green Acres, asphalt paving is scheduled to be finished this week. There are two larger intersections that remain to be paved, Linden and Magnolia. And then pavement marking will follow soon after, and that should wrap that one up. Any questions?
Good.
All right, work is continuing yet at the wastewater treatment plant on the tertiary filter project and biosolids dewatering equipment. And this being the end of the construction season, I think this will be the last construction update we have for a while.
All right, thank you. Item 5, request to consider updating wayfinding signage presented by Vicki Schnitzler, Historic Preservation Chairperson, and Chris.
Reason. It was, I'm sorry, it was up on the screen in a miniature thing and it's not there anymore.
It looks like a jumper. Yeah, there. Bring that over. I think he has to mail it, Lois. We do it, so fine. We're working there. There you go.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Vicki Schnitzler, the current chair for the Historic Preservation Commission, and our Vice President, Chris Coleman, is also with me. Our reason for coming tonight is, first of all, we want to thank you on the tremendous job that you have done with signage on Central Avenue. I think it looks great. Our reason for being here is that we have a couple suggestions that we'd like to make, especially when it comes to updating some of the signs and including some of our historical entities that we are so very proud of here in the city of Marshfield. So what we're going to do is you have a handout in your packet. You probably had a chance to look at it. We're going to very quickly start on the south side of town, go up the east side of the street with the signs, and give you our suggestions as far as what we would like to see happen. So first of all, we're starting down 29th Street. This is one of the first signs that visitors, when they come into Marsh from the south side, they see. Our first thing is that it should be straightened. We want to make a really good impression when people come into the city. So that would be one thing. We also have an entity, the Sioux Line Engine 2442. We'd like that added. And because we're on 29th Street, which goes directly over to the airport, we would also like the Flying Trees Aviation Museum added to it.
The train is one of our most visited historical sites here in Marshfield. That's the 2442 down by Wildwood, just so you're aware.
Any questions so far? Okay, let's go on to the next one. We're going to go up to I-State Trucking, the sign that is outside of their property. Everything looks good on there, except that we would like to add the Sioux Line Engine 2442, or possibly a picture, and you need a line drawing of it. My husband and I have something that might work if you're interested.
We do really like that you took the time to put the different pictures on the signs, including the Round Barn, the Wildwood Zoo, the symbol for the city, the marsh duck. They're all wonderful symbols of our community.
Okay, questions? Keep going. The next one is, as we're heading north on Central, is in front of Chip's Restaurant. And at that point, we didn't find anything that really needed to be added to that one, so that one's okay. Our next suggestion is to include a new sign. Actually, there is not a sign. What we are proposing is that there be one added to the east side of Central Avenue, just south of the 7th Street intersection. And at the top of it, it would say 7th. And then what we would like to include on it would be the West Park Street Historic District, and then the Chamber Office and Visitors Bureau, with the arrows going to the right, or to the left. Then we progress up Central Avenue in front of Baltus Bread and Butter. We would like the West 5th and 6th Historic District added to that one. Questions? In front of Rogers Cinema, since that is basically the beginning of the Central Avenue Historic District, we would like that added on there. And then also that Pleasant Hill Historic District goes off to the right, starting at 4th Street. Going up another block to the intersection by 3rd, in front of Off the Mat Yoga, there needs to be an update. The Upham Mansion no longer goes by Mansion. They prefer to be called the House or the Upham House. So if that could be a change that would be made. And then we'd also like to add the Upham House Historic District to that sign, if possible. In front of Moneywise, just south of the 2nd Street intersection. At the top, you have the library and senior center. We would like to include that it would read library, senior, and community center, because that is also one of the things that's there. And then the Pleasant Hill Historic District, and then also adding the Marshfield Heritage Museum, which is the basement of the old library. Questions?
The 2nd Street sign is one of the busiest signs already. We don't know what would be the best way to do this. So that might require some thought process with this sign.
Okay, next one. We are now up on the north of the boulevard, and we are now starting to head south. We are actually in front of the Hub City building on the corner of Arnold and Central. You can see that we have the fairgrounds downtown and the park. We would like to add to that the Sioux Line Engine 2442 and also Columbia Park, because in the park is one of our buildings that's on the National Register. Going on south on Central, when we get down to the intersection just before 2nd, there's a sign in front of Thimbleberry Books. Again, adding that community to the library and senior center, the Pleasant Hill District, the Upham House Historic District, and just as a wayfinding sign for people coming into town trying to find an event at Wenzel Plaza, it might be a good suggestion to add the Wenzel Family Plaza on that sign as well. And yes, as Chris mentioned, that 2nd Street gets a lot of stuff on it. So again, that may need some thought process as far as what can go on and what.
And although this is on the opposite side of the street, I have no idea how you'll fit it all. It would also be nice to reiterate that the Heritage Museum is to the left.
Okay, now we're down in front of the Blodgett House. excuse me, again, changing the mansion's name to the Upham House, including the Upham House District, the Wenzel Family Plaza, and then also Pleasant Hill District. Just before the intersection at 4th, in front of BMO, making sure or trying to incorporate Pleasant Hill Historic District. And again, these historic districts are on the National Register of Historic Places, so they are fairly important. Next block, the sign is actually in front of Elixir, and I'm not sure if that name is changing or not. City Hall has its arrow pointing straight ahead. I believe that probably that arrow needs to change direction possibly.
As our city hall has moved since then.
And then we also would like to include the West 5th and 6th Street Historic District.
Also, you know what we didn't think of? The name of the university has changed.
Yes,
It's no longer Marshfield Wood County. It's UWSP Marshfield.
so that university name probably needs an update as well. Okay, down in front of Heinzen's, again, whenever the Wildwood Park and Zoo is mentioned, we'd also like to see that the Sioux Line Engine 2442 is added. City Hall, again, with the arrow going off to the right, and then the West 5th and 6th Street Historic District. Down in front of the old City Hall, just to be added, we need a sign down there. There is no marker at all. What we are proposing is that the new sign would have 7th at the top like the other ones have. We would want to include the Chamber of Commerce Visitors Bureau with a sign. And it's kind of a horse of peace if it goes off to the right or if it goes off to the left, but it is on the right-hand side at that intersection. The Wildwood Park and Zoo, we'd like to see with a sign or an arrow going straight along with Sioux Line Engine 2442 and Park Street Historic District, which is off on the right-hand side. Going down towards the southern part of Central, in front of Perkins Sports, we like the signage that's there. We just would like to have Sioux Line Engine 2442 added to it. And then down, another sign is down by Car Wash and Dairy Queen. What we propose is that possibly take off the Marshfield Moonbird and add a Wildwood insignia at the bottom. And those are on some of the other signs. Possibly, since you're not mentioning the round barn, that picture could be taken off. And you could add a picture of the Sioux Line Engine 2442 and or add the words Sioux Line Engine 2442. We checked Oak Street. There were no wayfinding signs on Oak for people who are traveling that road. We also checked Veterans Boulevard, and we only found one sign.
On the whole run of Veteran.
And that one is on the south side of Veterans Road in front or between the police station and Domino's. And you can see that already have Fairgrounds downtown going both ways and the Wildwood Park and Zoo. Again, whenever the park and zoo is mentioned, we would like to see Sioux Line Engine 2442 added. And then because at that point, the next right-hand turn is on Central Avenue. Central Avenue is the main corridor for all of the historic districts. I mean, you're actually in the Central Ave Historic District when you turn the corner, but then Pleasant Hill goes off to the left, the other ones go off to the right. So I think it would be just a good idea to have just a general phrase of historic districts added to that. And that's all we are suggesting. Questions, comments?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes,
You missed one part.
okay.
On 15, Veterans Park. That's where the helicopter is,
Oh,
in the red arrow.
What street intersection is that or what? 7.
so to the helicopter? The helicopter? What you're saying?
Is there anything else that we missed?
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
Thanks for the presentation and thanks for everything you do with historic preservation. Refreshing. If I have a pet peeve, it's gonna be crooked signs. You know, it doesn't send a good message. I don't care what the circumstances are. A crooked sign just, you know, and I know people that will actually get out there and shim a stop sign, make it straight. Guilty as charged. So I don't know what our procedure is, but that just, to me, that's a no-brainer. You know, we should be straightening our signs. Years ago, I learned through one of our contractors that there's a standard when it comes to the speed at which cars are traveling and the size of signs and the font and stuff. Are you getting that kind of direction from the sign makers, or how's that happening?
It's been a comment that we've heard, usually after 5 or 6 words,
Okay,
you're not.
yeah,
But if you're coming into town and you're looking for something specific, your eye has a tendency of kind of skipping through until you kind
Yeah.
of see what.
okay. Because sometimes it can be information overload, so you've got a challenge there.
Right.
Um,
Especially when it comes to the second. you
Yeah.
know, that.
That is a tough one. And like I said, I don't know how that will be solved.
yeah,
There's so much on that Second Street corridor, you know, that really is Marshfield.
and as I'm wondering, I like the uniformity of the signage, but I'm wondering to myself, are some of these items that are listed more like, not historic, but civic? In other words, the city hall, it's, you know, kind of like a different a little bit than the round barn, right? And I'm wondering, should there be separate signs or even parking? A lot of the community, you'll see parking signs are in blue. And it's just a separate little circle with a P and a pointing or something like that. So that would give you some real estate on your sign.
And maybe we could, yes, get that parking off those signs, you know,
Right, exactly.
by simply using
Yeah.
that.
And make it straight. And then I would agree with you, the images are helpful, you know, worth 1,000 words, as they say. So anyway, thank you very much. I don't know what I know there's no action to be taken by us, but where does this go from here?
First of all, we don't have a budget for any of the signs. I think these were done and put through a program with the previous director of economic and development planning, who did the downtown signs. We, I believe, received a seed grant, I think, for the original set of signs that we have. It's been quite a while since these have been looked at, but it's going to either have to go to the capital improvement program or have to go through some type of grant funding.
We just thought we'd get out ahead of it before new signs are made without this good information, especially with new changes in the city.
And we also want to offer, if there's anything that the commission can do to help, please let us know.
Anybody
you.
else have anything?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. That was
Thank you.
informative and very helpful. All right, item 6. Request to purchase grapple safety equipment presented by Tim Rasmussen, Street Superintendent.
Hello. Upon review of our safety procedure in our forestry operations, it was determined that additional safety equipment was needed to help support safe work practices and emergency cleanup. and manpower injury and fatigue in our scheduled maintenance work. When called in for emergency forestry cleanup, a higher awareness of twisted trees and branches under pressure needs to be taken. When these situations occur, the grapple will be able to be used to hold the branches under pressure to minimize movement until the arborist is able to clear the danger zone. The grapple will also be able to be utilized in planned removal and pruning to help minimize manpower injury from slips, trips, while handling the brush, branches, and logs. The grapple will be outfitted to connect directly to our existing John Deere 190G wheeled excavator, allowing it to be able to be navigated throughout the city and within arm's reach of 90% of any of the trees needed. The decision to use the John Deere 190G aligns with the mission of the 701 to maximize revenue from equipment it already owns. Conversations of how the grapple would be utilized in other areas of our workload have already taken place and will continue to explore those possibilities. The following shows the updated list with the status of the previously requested equipment and how it changed throughout the 2024 calendar year. Future requests to utilize the remaining 2024 funds will be brought to the Board of Public Works for approval. Also attached is a letter of support from our city forester, Mark, the quote from Brooks Tractor, and the specifications of the grapple. Staff, the fiscal impact will be utilizing the 2024 701 internal service funds, and staff recommends the Board of Public Works approve the purchase of the Rammer RGP 20R from Brooks Tractor in the amount of $23,500.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Yep, that was second. Any comments, questions?
I have a few.
Go ahead, Russ.
So the Rammer is not it's not a John Deere product, is it?
John Deere sells the Rammer product. They also sell other type of grapples that are made by other manufacturers, but Rammer is the manufacturer, not a John Deere product. Correct.
So this is made in Finland from my research.
Okay.
And they've got probably 8 different models. How do we settle on the
20?
On the 20, yeah.
The size, the weight of the machine that it's going to be mounted on. So a smaller machine would have a smaller number in that 20 slot.
Okay. And how many near misses or recordable incidents have we had with safety?
It seems like we're actually, we kind of formed a small internal safety committee with Mark. It seems to be happening. We've noticed a increase, or maybe we're just more aware of it with Mark's presence of safety issues when we do get those wind blown. And, even last winter when we got the ice storms. And we find a big, we'd really like to push the safety of that, and a grapple truck would be the ultimate goal. This is a great fix for a short and a lot smaller dime that can get that safety aspect back into that workload.
So give me an example. What would a safety near miss be like?
The majority of it happens in the windstorm. Trees, we'll get a branch that's, a whole tree looks like it's leaning in one direction, but could be hung up in another tree. When that saw gets halfway through that branch, it'll either crack and split and, unknowingly moves. And anytime that tree unknowingly moves, that Mark couldn't predict it, puts them in that danger zone. This machine, and we've never had the ability to hold that from not kicking towards the Sawyer. And this grapple will allow that process to happen with some force holding it from hitting the person behind the saw.
Kind of stabilize things. So
Yes. Yep.
And what's the reach on that machine?
And that's why I stated 90%. It's not a machine that we would off-road unless the ground was froze. But it can reach, I would say, all of 30 feet without having the exact specifications. It can reach into front yards quite easily.
And the last question I have for you, Tim, I appreciate the information, by the way. When there's an emergency cleanup, where do you draw the line between responsibilities that fall on your department and responsibilities that fall on the utility?
So we don't touch anything that has a power line running through it. That is the dead set line of where utility, even if it is a tree owned by the city on the terrace, if it's in any power lines, we don't touch it. We will manage trees with phone or charter internet lines on them. We'll work through those, but anything touching within 10 feet of a power line, we call in Marshall Utilities to assist us.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? I'll just add that I think it's a fantastic idea, and those trees can be real widow makers
Yeah.
if you don't do it. So, okay, entertain motion. Did we do that already? Okay, good enough. So did we vote?
No.
Okay, let's do that. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Request for approval of 2025 to 2027 asphalt paving program presented by Josh Mort, city engineer.
All right, thank you. Every year in the CIP, we budget nearly $2 million or slightly more for asphalt paving program, which includes our mill and place streets and our overlays. And for 2025, there's 2.1 million in the CIP. And each of the next 2 years, 26 and 27, that was increased to 2.3. And in addition, there's usually $40,000 worth of engineering in the CIP to start planning the future years projects. So I just want to state that this 3-year plan that you've got in your packet it's really a priority list, so to speak. It's not really set in stone. We're pretty comfortable with the 25 list, the 26 and 27. I'm pretty comfortable with them, but depending on how asphalt bids are open in the spring, things could easily get shifted to move sooner or later. So I'll go through 25's list. So the first strategy we tend to do is pulverize and repave, where we grind up the pavement in place, reshape it, and ultimately repave asphalt over the top of that material. So for 25's list, there's an alley between Central and Chestnut that runs from Arnold to Blodgett. Also the Blodgett to Cleveland alley, and also the Cleveland to Daggy alley. And just FYI, there's maps for each year in your packet as well. There's an additional alley between Central and Chestnut from Grant to Harrison. And then also 3rd Street, Linden to Larch. Apple Avenue, Depot Street to Arnold Street is connected to the Depot Street project that's listed from just west of Apple to Elm. Also Apple Avenue, Washera Drive to McMillan Street. Cypress Avenue, Arlington Street to 8th Street. Heidi Lane from Hume Avenue to Washera Avenue. Colshed Street from Veterans Park, Wittesawyer Drive. Lee Avenue from 3rd Street to the south. Also from 3rd Street to the north. Marcy Court and Tremel Court would complete the list of pulverized and repaved streets. There also is a strategy called mill and repave, where we just mill 2 inches or so off the existing pavement and repave it with new asphalt. So there's 3 streets listed on this plan for 25, 26th Circle, 27th Circle, both down by Wildwood. And they all have curb and gutter, so it's just a matter of grinding the pavement out and repaving them. And also Cedar Avenue, 4th Street to 6th Street would be a similar process. And then lastly, there's a couple overlays listed. Ash Avenue, 5th Street to 9th Street. The overlay is maybe to be determined. We may be able to get by with just doing some concrete patching. And then also Maple Avenue, the rest of what we had done this year, being Central Avenue to 17th Street. We do also communicate with the wastewater utility and Marshfield Utilities for any necessary underground repairs each utility would like to do. So we try to make these overlap where we can. So on this list, there's some sewer work on Colshed Street. Several of these have some riser and lateral issues. And then also the Marshfield Utilities plan some main replacements and lead service replacements on some of these. I can read through the 26 and 27 list if you'd like, but 25 is fairly set in stone, I would say. The 26 and 7, not so much. So just bottom line for 25 is the CIP was 2.1 million. 42,000 of that was transferred to an upcoming paving project, a DOT grant funded project that was a little short. And the list I presented were over budget, but it really depends on when asphalt bids come in in March or so. Like I said, this list can be pretty fluid. So I'll leave it at just the 25 list for now. Any questions?
Go ahead, Chris.
So revenue is debt or borrowing, rather?
Yes.
Okay. And when it comes to paving alleys, is that part of the scope for these years? In other words, we'll change an alley from gravel to blacktop?
These are all asphalt alleys. It's
Okay.
pulverizing the asphalt that's there and repaving them.
Okay.
None of these on this 3-year plan include paving any gravel alleys.
This program has never had a situation where we've actually changed an alley from gravel to asphalt. That's kind of more of a new street type of construction, which would be a little different project.
But at one point, we were working from Central Avenue, east and west, to pave as many alleys as we could.
Well, our budget numbers are keeping us from completing that goal.
But you're so lucky at getting those grants now. Make it happen. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I'm assuming you're looking for a motion on this?
Yeah, I'm just looking for approval for the 3-year asphalt list.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Number 8, review of parking restrictions on North Cedar Avenue adjacent to Bram Park, presented by Josh Mort, city engineer.
So we recently received requests to review parking restrictions on Cedar between Grand Street and Ives Street. It's adjacent to Brame Park on the west side of Brame Park. There's some increased demand from the pickleball courts and the softball fields, and I was asked to look at removing some of the parking prohibitions on that street. So currently, there's no parking on either side of Cedar, almost for the entire block from Grant to Ives. There's a section by the skate park where parking is allowed, but everything south of the skate park all the way to Grant on the east side is parking prohibited. So this request was to remove the restrictions for the remainder of the east side adjacent to Brame Park. So the recommendation would be that parking on North Cedar Avenue be amended as noted. Parking prohibited, the language in the code would say on both sides of Cedar from Grant Street to Ives Street, except for the east side of Cedar from 75 feet north of the north line of Grant Street to 75 feet south of the south line of Ives Street. It gets a little wordy, but the map that was included in your packet, I think, is pretty clear. The language just kind of parallels some of the other language in our traffic code.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Any comments? Go ahead, Derek.
Thank you. My only comment would be, I mean, I would like to see us maybe block a small section near the parking area where they wouldn't be able to park right next to it, because I know visibility is usually a little bit of an issue when you're coming out of a public parking lot like that. I know that we don't currently have a park at Bram Park, but I think the intent is still to have children's equipment in there at some point. There's a lot of softball players and stuff that come. So just thinking of potential like high schoolers going in there for disc golf or anything like that, like trying to pull out of that parking lot with limited visibility. I'd like to see a little bit of a buffer before cars start parking right next to it.
Yeah, I agree. The restrictions are more or less generalized, but where signage is placed and that type of thing, there's, you know, standards for that in your entrances, and that can certainly be fine tuned.
Just a quick comment. You can't park within 10 feet of a driveway entrance, even though we see that all the time. And if you ever watch the schools, when they unload in the afternoons, you're not supposed to be within 20 feet of a crosswalk, but yet you see cars blocking crosswalks. So it's an enforcement issue sometimes.
Anyone else? Entertain a motion? Oh, you got them again.
Yeah.
Talking too much in between them. All right, with a motion and a second, we'll entertain a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9, request to create a selection committee for request of proposals presented by Tom Turchy, Director of Public Works.
All right, if you remember, back in early October, we sent out requests for proposals for design services for East 4th Street, South Maple Avenue to South Peach Avenue, and South Vine Avenue from East 4th Street to East 2nd Street. These are due tomorrow at noon. And we, in the last process, had 2 members of the Board of Public Works to assist in selection of consultants based on a quality-based selection process. So what we do is looking for the Board of Public Works to appoint 2 members to help us with the selection for this. Other members of this would be engineering division staff and just the members of the Board of Public Works. So basically, my recommendation is to appoint 2 members of the Board of Public Works to the selection committee and authorize the Director of Public Works to submit the DT 1515 paperwork to the DOT so they can start negotiating the 3-party contract agreement for construction services.
Didn't we do this when Derek and Brian weren't here? We nominated them.
I think you did.
I think we did, yeah. So meeting adjourned.
We have any nominations?
Didn't we? I thought we did.
You kind of mentioned it, but you didn't really put it as a formal motion.
I'll move that Derek and Brian be our representatives.
Do we have a second? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Comments? Questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 10, recommended items for future agendas.
I have 2. One is probably too late in the year for a bus tour that we talked about.
I'm still trying to get something set up, but my connection at the bus company is retired, so
Oh,
it's kind of a little bit more difficult to get one of those.
it seems to be running around here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then, speaking of retirement, if I could get some kind of documentation about procedures for vine extended and dust mitigation on file before you leave, Tom, that'd be great. I just don't
Okay.
want it to be another summer when we say, well, we're not sure what we had in place, what the plan was.
Well, after talking to Street Division and talking to Parks and Rec, basically it was assigned specifically to the Fair Commission to actually take in water and or use calcium chloride on there.
Okay, I'm on the commission, so I'll follow up and see if they have a procedure in place.
Anything else? No one? Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. And a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.